Hi, my name's Diane. I'm a psychology student at the University of New England. Today I'd like to talk to you about behaviour modification techniques. The behaviour I'm focusing on today is childhood fingernail biting. When attempting to modify any behaviour, the behaviour needs to be defined to determine exactly what the behaviour is and what you would like to change. I've defined childhood fingernail biting as the child putting their fingernails in their mouth and closing their teeth on their nail, cuticle, or the skin around the nail. The next step is to conduct interviews with the child and the parents. You would observe the child during the interview, as well as asking the child about things that they like and dislike, as well as talking about the fingernail biting, to see if it has any detrimental effects on the child. You would also ask the parents if they have noticed any triggers or any situations that make the fingernail biting worse in the During these interviews, you discuss with the child and the child's parents how you're going to score a baseline. And the baseline is what you're going to base your intervention on. It shows you the amount of episodes that are occurring each day and any triggers that may or may not be present during these episodes. The child needs to be presented with a form to fill out over the baseline of a week, and this form needs to include a date, a time, a location of where the episode occurred, anybody who was present when this episode occurred, what the child was feeling, what emotion was the child feeling at the time before the fingernail biting, and what emotion the child was feeling after the fingernail biting. If the child noticed any triggers to the bitings like boredom or nervous, etc. After you've done the baseline, then you would assess the data that you have collected and work out exactly how many episodes were occurring each day, and if there were any triggers or consequences, so any antecedents or consequences of the fingernail biting, and if you can determine the most common antecedent or consequence of the fingernail biting. The trigger that I would like to focus on today is boredom. Boredom was the trigger in the assessment that I did, and boredom was the antecedent of the fingernail biting, and the relief of the boredom was the consequence of the fingernail biting. After you have identified the most prevalent antecedent and consequence, then you would begin an intervention which would last a minimum of 4 weeks. In this intervention, you would discuss with the child a competing behaviour that they could do instead of doing the fingernail biting. This has to be a very strong competing behaviour because the fingernail biting would have been well established. The competing response that I had success with was the child put their hands down beside their sides and clench their fists like this for a total of 3 minutes every time they noticed that they were putting their hands to their mouth to bite their nails. Coupled with this competing response, the child has to do a self-monitoring during the intervention period. This self-monitoring needs to be done on a form that says the date and the time of each episode. The child also needs to have a goal for each day of a maximum number of episodes that are allowed. To get the maximum number of episodes that should be allowed each day, you need to get the average of the episodes per day off the baseline. Then you start with 1 or 2 episodes less than that per day. You don't lower the maximum number of daily episodes for the goal until the child has successfully hit the goal or bettered the goal for at least 2 days in succession. You need to have praise as a reinforcer every day that the child reaches a goal. You need to ensure that the child feels that they are making a difference and that what they're doing is important. You need to talk to the child about things that they find great interest in and use these as a very powerful reinforcer. Powerful reinforcers that I've discussed with children have been iTunes cards, friends coming over for a sleepover, money, toys that they've wanted for a very long time, video games, all those kinds of things that are not everyday occurrences in a child's life. You also need to make sure that you don't put the reinforcer only at the very end of the intervention. Children lose interest very quickly and they can't see that they're still going to get that at the very end. 4 weeks is a very long time in a child's life, and having a powerful reinforcer for either each week or at the halfway mark of 2 weeks would make the child very happy. And having a very powerful reinforcer gives the child the incentive to keep up the recording on the self-assessment, and the self-assessment causes self-awareness, and the child seems to be able to continue with the recording. Parents can also be very helpful in the self-awareness of the child. That is when the child is in the presence of the parents and the parents notice that the child is putting their fingers in their mouth or chewing on their fingernails, then the parent could have a signal like like a fake cough, so that the child becomes aware that they are also doing the fingernail biting. You'll need to reassess your intervention at the 2-week mark, and if there is no improvement or the goals are not going down at all, you may need to reassess and get different reinforcers or try a different competing response. Good luck!